Welcome back in the content studio. If you haven't been here before, you've missed a couple of really great sessions. PepsiCo, Taboola, and many others have talked about why content, when content, how much content, why not content, how to measure content, and so on and so forth. So we're going to kick it off with the second of the last two presentations. So we have two presentations after the break here. The first one is from Shutterstock. Juliette Cuijpers is Regional Director for LATAM for Shutterstock. Shutterstock, obviously a great resource of content. And we're going to talk about how to create content that can help you with actionable results from using content. A lot of examples, a lot of visuals. So Juliette, take it away.
Yep. Dankjewel, Martin. Don't worry, I'm not going to do this in Dutch, but I just figured out that Martin is Dutch as well, so am I. So I'm going to talk to you today about the scaling of content creation. I have a little focus group at home. It's my 8-year-old daughter and her neighbor friend. And when I look at their media consumption, they're really mainly using 3 channels right now. It's Netflix, it's YouTube, and then it's like games and on iPad or generally my cell phone. So really, but you know, even just across these 3 channels, they are exposed to quite some advertising, but also just to a lot of information overall. And sometimes that information comes in handy. For example, the other day I was running late for a conference and the cable of my computer broke. Within 5 minutes, my daughter comes up with her hot glue gun and she puts some glue around my cable and fixes it, and I'm good for the rest of the day. So I was like, thank you, but how did you know how to do this? And she said, oh, 5-minute crafts videos on YouTube. You know, we'll teach you everything. Which I thought was kind of funny. But if you really look at like the amount of information they're already exposed to right now, and they're only 8 years old, you can see that this is only going to get, you know, more and more as they get older. So as marketers, you really want to kind of rethink how you're creating content to be up against those factors. So I want to talk about 3 external factors that are stressing the system. One is the explosion of mobile. The second is the digital triopoly of Amazon, Facebook, and Google. And the third is the notion of individuality at scale. And I will get into that. So the way mobile has grown is incredible, right? We're on our phone about 150 times a day, which equates to about 3 hours on our devices. The average person checks Facebook about 14 times a day. We work quite a bit with Facebook, and you know, our rep will tell us that on any given session, somebody will scroll the length of the Empire State Building. So really, when you think about gaining an eyeball, it really has turned into, you know, competing for the stopping of a thumb. Plus, you're competing with baby pictures and things like that. So you're not just competing with, you know, other brands in your space, but really with the entire world. And video is really is growing, especially in Latin America. Here on the screen is the campaign Lo Chingón Está Aquí from Cerveza Victoria in Mexico. And I really love this campaign because it really brings home the need and the potential of creating you know, actual content that's really related to the actual demographics. And then this is a campaign from Coca-Cola Mexico, which is a YouTube campaign that was actually 5 times more effective than more traditional video production. And Latin America is actually really a front runner when it comes to the growth of video consumption. And so we need to scale the video production, right? There's more people putting out more videos out there, and then campaign cycles are getting shorter as well. So we really need to create more content. But if you think about the traditional way that we've been creating video, it's tough. You know, our budgets kind of generally stay the same. and it costs between $53K and $134K on average to create a video in Latin America. If you're doing this in the US market, it's about 2.5 times that cost. And how marketers have often, found a solution for this is by creating like one big piece and then slicing that piece in in many different 6-second ads. But really the idea of like creating one big piece of content that's going to live on for a while. And that's not really a good strategy anymore. And then there's this notion of the digital triopoly of Facebook, Google. It's really a duopoly at the moment when it comes to ad spend. So about 60% of the combined share of digital ad revenues go to Facebook and Google. And about 20% of the digital media spend goes to Facebook. Although Amazon's ad creation is growing quite a bit as well, 129% year over year. So in the big picture, it's still quite small. But as a marketer, you do want to be mindful of that channel. So really what this digital triopoly has done is like the products that they've built, they're really built to allow anybody to scale up their messaging around the world. So it's quite easy. If I want to launch a brand, and I want to message across all these different segments, I can do that via Facebook and Google. So as big brand marketers, you're also competing with a lot of smaller brands out there. And then there's this notion of individuality at scale. So we think of the Mad Men era. This really has been quite persistent until today. So think about the creative brief, right? You create this one page with a little bit of background, and then you develop this one, target audience, and you're trying to create a thread with this one message that's going to fit for everybody. But we can target, and we should target much, much better now, right? We're able to serve up content and messaging in a much more fine-tuned way. So we really need to rethink how we are going to reach these different types of audiences. But it's hard to create content. So the number one problem that people have today in content production is creation of content. So quite often when we start working with customers and they're trying to do something new, they're like, oh great, let's go create some stuff. And we're like, great, what do you want to create? And then there are no ideas, right? And that problem has kept the creative agency space going for, has kept them going for a while, which is great. But, the fact that generating ideas to create content from is difficult is a core problem. And then we need more ideas. Right? I don't think anybody in this room will say, I did a lot less this year than I did last year, plus I'm getting a lot more money to do it. Right? And really, the process hasn't changed. So the linear process of, you create a brief, you bring it to your account director at the agency that brings it to their creative team. They put together, 2 or 3 concepts. We merge two concepts into one. We bring in a production team, and then 3-4 weeks later, we have a campaign. We've been doing it that way since the 50s. Of course, we've nuanced it with the rise of digital and also the evolution of stock, right? We've evolved from the famous handshake photo in a business meeting to really high quality, rich lifestyle photography readily available. But in branded content production, when you are working with logos and trademarks come into play, we tend to just add more channels, more people, and more cost. But we haven't really rethought the process overall. And that's really the genesis why Flashstock was created and acquired by Shutterstock shortly thereafter. We thought there was a better way to create that content process. And in order to really solve this problem, we needed to bring in technology. So we really look at the combination of people and technology as being able to scale up the creation of branded content. So on the people side, we have a network of 15,000 content contributors that we curate and that we assign variables to as to things that they're good at, right? So some photographers are really good at shooting cars. Others are really good at lifestyle photography. Others are really good at products, right? And also, of course, the location as to where these photographers are is very important. And then on the technology side, we have this platform that codifies brand guidelines. So across 99 different variables across 5 categories that enable a brand to really define their visual footprint. And that then gets translated into things that photographers can understand, like depth of field, or types of models, or color palettes, or the way products should be shot, or what kind of materials should be in the background, things like that. And then this content gets produced by the network, it gets uploaded to the platform, and the brand can then select the content that they want, and they can also give feedback. So there's this constant kind of feedback loop and iteration. So really, what in working with these brands, there are 3 things that we see that are enabling a brand to actually scale their content creation. The first one is visual identity. The second is rapid ideation. And the third is scalable production. So I'm going to take you through each of these to kind of help you scale your content creation. So first, you really need to look at what is your visual identity, right? And then there's 2 key problems that most brands state. One is consistency, the other one is differentiation. The more consistent our communication, the higher the recall, the better the key message takeaway, right? And then the better the campaign results overall, obviously. And then on the differentiation side, it's really about you want to stand out, you don't want to look the same like other brands in your same category. So here's an example of a brand with a very inconsistent visual footprint, right? You can really see here that this is kind of all over the place. And then there's something going on with that guy, like holding the sub like a baby. I don't really know what's happening there. And then here's another example in the water category. So you can really see here, it's the same type of product shots, it's the same type of color palette, it's the same kind of lifestyle shots. You could maybe pick one out because of the picture of Jennifer Aniston, but that's really kind of it. So L'Oreal came to us with this challenge, and what they wanted was to be able to calibrate their visual identity across a bunch of their brands in the beauty segment. So we went through the process with them, really to define what their brand's visual footprints are across multiple brands, right? And then here's an example of how this would work on the platform. You upload these visual examples of what this visual footprint would look like, and then it's calibrated across different variables like composition and tone and lighting and environments, right? And these are then again these things that photographers can understand. And then here, is an example of the output. So it's Dermablend, Vichy, and Baxter, and you can really see here that these are very clear, differentiated visual footprints. And also within these different visual footprints, there's consistency. So Blend is like, it's a much more like natural color palette. Models are really kind of like getting into the frame. And then on Vichy, it's much more like it's brighter, it's more pastel-y colors, and then Baxter is a lot more kind of richer. There's a lot of West Coast references, lifestyle shots, it's much more vibrant. Here's another example of Blend. So you can see it's really like the earthy tones. The way the model is kind of like partially only in the shot. And the next one is example of Vichy. So you can see here a shallow depth of field, luxurious feel. And then here is Baxter, where it's a much more stronger kind of visual footprint. And the model's fully in frame. So now let's move to the second part of our content framework. It's rapid ideation and a challenge that we have of creating ideas in a rapid and iterative way. So, this term rapid ideation is something that's really used a lot in the technology space, in the startup space, so it may not be used that much in the corporate space, CPG, or like media environments. But there are three things that you want to think about when it comes to rapid ideation. The first one is the process. The second one is the sources. And the third one is less rules. So if you think about the process, we often hear from brands that are trying to do something new that they're kind of getting stuck in the waterfall process of trying to, you come up with one big concept and then all this set of tasks that then need to result into a launch. And it's hard to get things done. And very often these things actually don't get done and nothing gets actually launched. But if you think about the agile approach, it's really more the concept of like, what are the small things that we can do in a shorter period of time that we can push out quickly, and then we can learn and we can iterate. Then in terms of sources and sourcing content, so in the more traditional linear approach, it's like, I'm going to order something and I'm going to get a delicious trout, right? And in the more distributed model, it's like, we're going to brief a bunch of fishermen and we're going to get trout, we're going to get tilapia, we're going to get bass, and it's going to come from all over the world, right? And it's really this distributed model that's driving like the next generation of companies like Airbnb and Uber, et cetera. And then it's around less rules. So as brand marketers, you often want to be perfect, right? And you want to be on brand. But I think you can loosen up a little bit. You're trying to reach different segments, so you also want to be able to be a little bit flexible with that. Here's an example of 2 iterations that we did with Big Gay Ice Cream, which is a brand under Nestle. So on the left side, you see, we did, and we brought this out to our contributor network, of course, who created this. On the left side, the concept is much more like product shots. It's linear, it's bright colors. And on the right side, it's much more the experience of the gooey and sensual experience of eating ice cream, right? And Big Gay put both out into the market. So which one do you think did better? The right side? No, it was the left side. We all like the idea of the gooey eating ice cream, but people like products, apparently. And here's an example of scaling production. So Marriott they came to us with the challenge of creating a whole bunch of content for 80 destinations across 30 countries. And they wanted to create content like boomerangs and Instagram stories and things like that, GIFs and cinemagraphs. So we put this out to our contributor network, and within about 3 weeks we were able to turn out the first pieces of content, and they put those out right away, and then we iterated on those. So here are some examples of the Instagram stories. And then at the end of the story, they also added in this nice little call to action to drum up bookings. And here's another example of scaling production across territories. This is Scotiabank is a Canadian company, and they wanted to expand their international footprint or their international presence. So we brought this out to our network of contributors and created content featuring aspirational lifestyle scenarios from Canada to the Dominican Republic, special moments like becoming a first-time homeowner in Peru, special occasions in the Caribbean, and locals in Mexico City. That concludes kind of the framework of, of content creation. So in conclusion, really, I'd like to leave you today with 3 reminders. The first one is rethink the model, right? The traditional process is really ready for a change, and the one-stop shop really doesn't exist anymore. So you can really restructure the way you are creating content. The second is build and test more. Really the idea of testing and iterating. And then the last one really is, things don't need to be perfect. We've always been obsessed with creating perfect content and being on brand. But if I go back to that little focus group at the beginning, my daughter watches a whole bunch of these 100 craft videos or box fort. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's literally like creating forts out of boxes. But then also, after a while, they go, okay, great, Harry Potter or Star Wars. Equally entertaining across those two. So really what when you're creating content, you want to think you don't have to be picture perfect for Facebook. You don't have to be picture perfect for Instagram. You just need to really figure out how you can be equally entertaining in the quick, fast, dirty production, for social media, as well as the big Harry Potter or Star Wars saga that you may be creating. That's it for me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Juliette.
We'll still be here.
I want to make sure that if you have any questions, we can answer those now. We have a few more minutes left. So I wanted to remind you in the bag that you got today, there's this little information leaflet from Shutterstock in there, so with contact details on there as well. So if you didn't catch it from here, you can certainly look at it for there. Who are your clients? Are you talking directly to advertisers, or are you working through agencies?
Yes, it's actually both. However, what we are seeing is quite a change in the space where advertisers are starting to become more self-sufficient and work with us directly as well. We work a lot with consumer goods, actually. This service seems to be very, very applicable to the consumer goods market, but also financial industry, for example.
Cool. Anything else from anybody else? In terms of a brief, what kind is the brief that you need? Is that a different kind of brief than what a marketer? So do you need to help them write the brief, or do you?
We can. As I said earlier, especially if we're working with brands directly that may not be used to that, right? So brief writing is a service that you can add on, but it's either way. In essence, we're really providing the tools to do it. But we don't want to necessarily fill in what a brand should be creating. But we can help.
And how happy is a client when you tell them that, well, that was really a mess that you've created so far. Now we're going to solve it. I mean, how do you go through that process of sort of showing them the ugly truth to get to a better future?
Well, yeah, it's really in the process of talking to a client and trying to figure out if this is the service that would help them. We really try to kind of feel out what the problems are, and we dig really deep in those first conversations. So
right.
In that, generally, we kind of help the customer also understand what the problem really is.
And is there a limitation to what media you can cover? So I mean, you showed a little bit like GIFs and
yeah. So I mean, look, Sky's the limit.
Right.
But generally, it's you know, images is the easiest, of course, but we also create videos and GIFs and boomerangs and all kinds of things.
Okay.
Yep.
And what is the split between how much you already have sort of in your database versus what needs to be created on purpose?
I mean, those are kind of two different things, really.
Okay.
However, you can really combine them too. So, you know, it gets expensive to produce original content, and if you want to have your brand like placed in a photo, you can't use stock, obviously.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean you can kind of find a combination, and that kind of helps also with, you know, your budget.
Are there any other questions for Shutterstock and how to create content or benefit from the content that already exists within their database? All right, very good. Well, thank you very much, Juliette.
Thank you.
And again, if you need them, contact details are right there.